Hey, listeners. Welcome to Pod Talk, a brand new series that's a podcast about other podcasts. I'm your host, Becky Holland, and while this is my first foray into creating content, I am an avid podcast listener, and I'm super excited to be here with you and to share some of my favorite podcast shows as recommendations for your next listen. I intend to provide you with a curated, diverse collection of shows that are both informative and entertaining, and some a little of both. My plan is to share with you some of the highlights and big themes that resonate with me and hopefully never any spoilers. So thanks so much again for being here and sharing this space with me, and I hope you enjoy my new show. Okay, so as an avid listener, I'm constantly searching for my next great listen, and I'm always thinking of someone in my life that I'd like to share that show with. And while I love it when shows that come recommended just happen to show up in my feed thanks to AI, there are times I struggle to find my next obsession. I don't know about you, but my first step is to check in with the latest episodes of shows I already follow. And then when this doesn't pan out, my next go-to is to hit the browse button or even start searching in the big categories like documentary, true crime, society culture, series, health and fitness, and so on and so on. Usually, I have already listened to most of the popular shows. But what I've come to realize is that it kind of feels like something's missing in this space. I don't know, maybe a show that shares favorites and must-listen-tos based on aspects like content and storylines, information, entertainment, the voice and style of hosts, and so on. And so Pod Talk it is. And if you think this sounds a little bit like book talk, but for podcasts, that's exactly my hope. So let's get into some recommendations. It all began with Serial, didn't it, for everyone? To be honest, I don't remember exactly when I first listened to a podcast. Like many of us, I think my first long-form storytelling series was Serial, a true crime investigation hosted by the amazing Sarah Koenig, chronicling the events surrounding the brutal murder of a young high school senior, Hae-Min Lee, and her ex-boyfriend, who was then accused, then convicted, then had his conviction overturned, and whose conviction is now reinstated but is currently a free man, Adnan Syed. Did you get all that? I know it's a lot. Serial quickly became a pioneer for investigative journalism, blending a compelling narrative style with a talented host, using the podcast platform to not only share the story as it unfolded in real time, but also to share the host's out loud thinking with listeners, questions, confusions, and even doubts. For me, this authenticity and transparency really resonated. At times, I even found myself talking back to Sarah with my wonderments about the case. Another aspect that made Serial stand out is Sarah's ability to share both sides of the story, never claiming her own stance. Sarah adeptly shares both the state of Maryland's prosecution case and Adnan's defense, claiming innocence. This side-by-side created an ambiguous but deeply enthralling must-listen. So if you haven't already, check out Serial. So all that being said, I think the true hook for me into the podcast medium was The Dropout, a story that highlighted the many faces of Elizabeth Holmes, founder and CEO of Theranos, a health tech startup company from the notorious Silicon Valley. Admittedly, I've always been a mystery thriller consumer, mostly via books growing up. And I don't know about you, but this long-form investigative journalism style is totally my jam. Similar to Serial, The Dropout stood out mainly due to host Rebecca Jarvis's excellent reporting, incredible storytelling, and the riveting true crime events, coupled with courtroom reporting, interviews, and you just can't make this up narrative of gaslighting at the highest levels, with federal charges and whistleblowing to boot. Without giving too much away, this podcast truly rivaled any other I had heard before and was my official point of entry into this storytelling medium. And to be honest, I never look back. So if you haven't listened to The Dropout, I highly recommend. And speaking of origin points, pun intended, you've got to listen to Firebug. So currently this podcast series is behind a paywall hosted by The Binge. I think because Apple has released a new show called Smoke, which is very loosely based on this true crime thriller. Side note, I am currently watching the show Smoke, and if you don't have Apple TV, personally, I'd spend my money on a binge subscription for the podcast over the TV show, and go ahead and binge it because it's that good. But years ago, it was free, and so I listened. Firebug is another gripping series based on true events hosted by Carrie Antholis, who I think has a smooth as spoke voice and style to his narration. Yes, pun intended again. But honestly, his voice is both as commanding and effortless as the storyline, seducing listeners with each episode. Admittedly, this story is a bit of a challenge to set up for you without giving away any spoilers, so this recommendation will be brief. Firebug is about a series of fires in California set by an arsonist, aka a firebug, investigated by a renowned arson investigator and former LA fire captain named John Orr, who was also writing a fictional novel entitled Points of Origin about a firebug setting fires. Tricky, right? So while I don't want to give any more away, this podcast, Firebug, also comes highly recommended. So give it a try. So that's all for this first episode. I know it was kind of quick, but I hope you enjoyed listening to my new show, Pod Talk, as well as being inspired to go out and check out my recommendations. Until next time, thanks so much for being here with me, and be on the lookout for many future episodes, because I plan on making many, many more. Thanks so much, and take care.